I had always believed that 5 years meant something. 5 years of memories, arguments, makeups, traveling, family dinners, dreams. 5 years of building a life with someone who promised forever. His name was Alejandro. He was tall, charming, thoughtful in his own way, the kind of man who remembered your favorite wine but forgot your birthday. We met during our university days in Valencia, and since then, we had been inseparable. Our small flat near the Turia Gardens was filled with tiny reminders of our love, framed pictures from our trip to Granada, a little ceramic bowl from Pamplona, and the fading map we'd marked with all the cities we planned to visit together. I was happy. Or, at least, I believed I was. Last autumn, Alejandro proposed. It was simple. No grand gestures or fancy dinners. Just the two of us at home, in our pajamas, with a cheap bottle of cava and an awkward smile on his face. I laughed, cried, and said yes. We weren't rich, but we had each other. I wore the modest silver ring like it was made of diamonds. But recently something had shifted. He came home later than usual, distracted, phone always face down. I'd ask about the wedding plans, but he'd shrug, say we had plenty of time. When I showed him venues I liked, he barely glanced. Once I mentioned my mother's wedding dress. He looked at me like I'd said something shameful. Still, I tried not to overthink. Maybe he was stressed. His job at the real estate firm was demanding, and the economy hadn't been kind lately. I gave him space. I didn't want to be the nagging fiancé. I told myself, this is just a phase. Then one evening, everything fell apart. I had made arroz al horno, his favorite. The apartment smelled of garlic and rosemary. I set the table, lit candles, even wore the red dress he once said made me look like a flamenco dancer. He walked in, glanced at the setup, and sighed. "We need to talk," he said. I froze. That sentence, always the prelude to something terrible. He sat across from me, not touching the food, not touching me. He looked tired, but also detached, like a man about to return a faulty item. "I've been thinking," he said, "about us, about the future. I'm not sure I want to get married." I didn't understand. At first, I thought he was joking. I even laughed a little, but his expression didn't change. "You're not sure?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "I don't think I'm ready. Maybe I never was. I care about you, Isabel. I do. But marriage, it feels like something we're supposed to do, not something I want to do." The room spun. 5 years. 5 birthdays. 5 Christmases. And now he wasn't sure? I couldn't speak. I just stared at the untouched food, at the ring on my finger that suddenly felt too tight. Alejandro stood, gently reached across the table, and placed his hand over mine. But it felt like pity, not love. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered. But he already had. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just nodded, numb. He left that night, saying he needed time to think. I stayed behind, in the red dress, next to the cold dinner, feeling like a fool. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't just about cold feet. It was something deeper, something darker, something that would unravel every truth I thought I knew about our love. The next morning, the sun rose like nothing had changed. But everything had. The bed beside me was cold. Alejandro hadn't come home. I sat on the balcony, sipping burnt coffee, watching early joggers pass through the quiet streets of Valencia. My phone lay silent on the table. No message. No apology. No explanation. In the kitchen, the leftovers from last night still sat on the stove, untouched. I threw them out. I couldn't bear the smell. Every trace of that dinner felt like a reminder of my humiliation. I tried to distract myself, laundry, dishes, emails. But every corner of the flat whispered his name. His coat still hung by the door. His toothbrush in the cup. His cologne lingering on the sheets. My life had become a museum of a love that might already be dead. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say it out loud, that my fiancé might be leaving me. Instead, I went to work at the small bookshop in Razafa like nothing was wrong. Carmen, my boss and friend, noticed something was off. She always did. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, handing me a warm croissant from the bakery next door. I forced a smile. Just a rough night. She gave me a look. The kind older women give when they know you're lying, but choose not to press. Around midday, I stepped outside for some air and checked my phone. Still nothing from Alejandro. But there was something else, a message from an unknown number. He's not who you think he is. I stared at it, heart pounding. I replied instantly. Who is this? No answer. The message was unsigned, no profile photo. Just those 7 words. Enough to set my mind on fire. I spent the rest of the day watching the door, expecting someone to appear. But no one did. When I got home that evening, Alejandro was there, sitting on the couch, like nothing had happened. I still have my keys, he said, sheepishly. I didn't speak. I just waited. I'm sorry, he said, rubbing his forehead. I shouldn't have dropped that on you. I was being selfish. Are you calling off the wedding? I asked, my voice flat. He looked down. I don't know. That was worse than a yes. We sat in silence. Then I asked, is there someone else? He looked up sharply. No. Of course not. But something flickered in his eyes. Something too quick to catch, but impossible to ignore. I nodded slowly. Right. He stood and walked to the window, staring out into the twilight. I feel trapped, I.s.a. Like I've been living a life I didn't choose. I swallowed hard. Then why did you propose? He turned, hands in his pockets. Because I thought it would fix things. Fix what? He didn't say more. He kissed my forehead, said he'd sleep at his cousin's place for a few days, and left again. As soon as the door closed, I opened my phone and stared at the strange message again. He's not who you think he is. I should have deleted it. But I didn't. I had no idea who sent it. But deep down, I knew they were right. The following days blurred into one long, anxious silence. Alejandro didn't return, and aside from a brief message saying he needed space to think, he didn't reach out again. I didn't chase him. I couldn't. My pride was already in pieces. But that message, he's not who you think he is, kept haunting me. I tried to brush it off, tell myself it was some cruel joke or spam. But my gut wouldn't let it go. By Thursday, the tension inside me became unbearable. I needed answers. And I knew exactly where to start. I went to see Lucia. She was Alejandro's sister. Warm, sharp-witted, and fiercely protective of him. We had grown close over the years. If anyone knew what was going on with him, it would be her. Lucia welcomed me into her flat in El Carmen with a tight hug and a worried look. You look terrible, she said gently. I sat on the sofa and took a breath. Is he seeing someone else? She blinked, taken aback. What? No. Why would you think that? I hesitated, then pulled out my phone and showed her the message. She read it, eyes narrowing. That's creepy. Who sent this? I don't know, I whispered. But it doesn't feel random. Lucia looked genuinely confused. I.s.a. if he were seeing someone else, I'd know. He's been off lately, yes, but cheating? That's not him. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something had changed in Alejandro. And not just recently. Looking back, the signs had been there. The late nights. The distracted stares. The sudden bursts of affection followed by cold silences. I'd just chosen not to see them. Lucia made tea while I stared out of her window, watching pigeons flutter across the rooftops. Maybe it's not another woman, I said, more to myself than to her. Maybe it's something else he's hiding. Lucia returned with 2 mugs and sat beside me. Like what? I shrugged. Money problems? Secrets from the past? A second life? She gave a half laugh. You've been reading too many thrillers. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I've just been ignoring the truth. That night, back at my flat, I couldn't sleep. I opened Alejandro's drawer, the one he always kept locked. I had found the spare key months ago and never used it. Until now. Inside were the usual things. Old passports, receipts, a broken watch. But underneath, folded neatly, was a photograph I had never seen before. It was Alejandro, younger, maybe in his early 20s. He was standing with a woman. She wasn't me. She was beautiful, olive skin, dark curls, smiling like she belonged beside him. On the back, scribbled in faded ink, Al and C. Marbella, 2015.
See?
I sat on the floor, staring at the picture, heart racing.
Who is she?
Why had he kept this hidden? And more importantly, why did it feel like the beginning of the truth? I tucked the photo back into the drawer and locked it. Suddenly, I felt watched. I walked to the window and glanced down into the street. A figure stood beneath the lamppost, still, facing up. I stepped back quickly, heart thudding. When I looked again, they were gone. The city was quiet. Too quiet. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was unraveling Alejandro's secrets or falling into something far darker. The morning sun cast a golden haze over the rooftops of Valencia, but the warmth did nothing to ease the chill inside me. I couldn't stop staring at the photograph, at the woman with the dark curls and the wide, trusting smile. C. Marbella, 2015. That name, that date, they meant something. I could feel it. After a restless night, I decided to go to Marbella. It was impulsive, maybe even foolish, but I couldn't wait around hoping Alejandro would come home with answers. I needed to find them myself. I packed a small bag, left Lucia a vague message, and took the first train south. The journey was long and quiet, the countryside passing in a blur of olive groves and sunlit plains. I kept the photo clutched in my hand like a fragile clue. Marbella greeted me with its usual charm. Palm trees swaying along the coast, chic boutiques lining the old town, laughter spilling from tapas bars. But beneath the postcard-perfect scenery, I felt something else. Something tense, like the town itself was holding its breath. I began my search at the town archives, pretending I was researching a photography project. I showed the woman at the desk the photo and asked, casually, if she recognized the beach or the hotel in the background. She squinted. Looks like Playa de Venus. And that hotel? That used to be the Solera Club. Closed down years ago. I jotted it down and thanked her. The Solera Club. The name stirred something in me, vague and distant. Maybe Alejandro had mentioned it once, long ago, in passing. I had no reason to remember.
Until now.
I took a taxi there. The place had fallen into disrepair, its gates rusted, graffiti scrawled across the old marble walls. The garden was overgrown, the windows boarded. But someone had been here recently. I noticed a path through the weeds, faint footprints in the dirt. I followed them. They led to a small annex building at the back, once a guest house, perhaps. The door was ajar. Inside, dust danced in shafts of sunlight. The air smelled of mildew and decay. But it wasn't empty. There were papers.
Dozens of them.
Stacked haphazardly on an old desk. Photographs.
Notes.
Newspaper clippings. And at the center, a corkboard covered with red string, maps, and faces. One of them was Alejandro. I froze. Another was the woman from the photo. Her picture had a name scribbled beneath it, Catalina Ruiz. Catalina.
C.
I reached for the nearest paper. A printout of a news article from 2016. Local woman missing after yacht trip. Boyfriend questioned, later released without charge. My blood ran cold. Alejandro had a girlfriend. Catalina. She vanished. And he was questioned? Why had he never told me? Suddenly footsteps. I spun around, heart pounding. A man stood in the doorway. Middle-aged, worn-looking, with sharp eyes. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice low and grave. I'm looking for someone. Alejandro Moreno. He stepped closer, studying me. You're too late. What do you mean? He didn't answer. Just handed me an envelope from the table. Inside was another photo. Alejandro. Catalina. And a boat in the background. On the back, in the same faded handwriting. The last day. The photograph trembled in my hands. The last day. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Catalina's. I could tell now, having seen her name written on several of the documents in that dimly lit annex. The way she looped her DS, how the T stood tall and defiant. I stared at Alejandro's face in the photo. He looked happy, carefree, with his arms slung around Catalina's shoulder. Her head was tilted toward him, smiling. The sea glimmered behind them, the yacht pristine under the sun. A picture-perfect moment.
A lie.
The man in front of me, the one who had handed me the envelope, stepped back into the shadows. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. "I worked with Catalina's father. We were trying to find her after she disappeared. No one else cared. No one but her family. And then the trail went cold." I looked at the corkboard again. The red threads, the web of connections. Alejandro's name appeared more than once, tied to businesses, locations, even a bank account in Gibraltar. But Alejandro was never charged. "Because there wasn't enough proof," the man replied. "And because someone powerful made it go away." The words hung between us like smoke. I stumbled out into the fading daylight. My heart felt heavy, my legs weak. I wandered the streets of Marbella in a daze, piecing together fragments of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed. The fiancé I had loved, lived with, planned a future with, was now a stranger tangled in a woman's disappearance. I found a small pension near the old town and checked in for the night. I needed space to think.
To breathe.
I laid the photographs and documents out across the bed. Alejandro's face stared back at me from every angle. It felt like betrayal was written in his smile. But there was more. One paper stood out, a letter from Catalina to her friend, dated just days before she vanished. "I think he's hiding something. He says he loves me, but I've seen things. I don't trust him. If anything happens to me, it's him. It's always been him." I read the letter again and again. Catalina had been afraid. But then why stay? Why get on that yacht? The next morning, I called Lucia. "Have you spoken to Alejandro?" I asked, trying to sound calm.
No.
"He hasn't come home," she said quietly. "But someone was here last night. I think he was watching the house." I froze. "Did you call the police?"
No.
I wasn't sure, but I locked all the doors. I swallowed hard. "Lucia, listen to me. There's something I have to tell you. Something about Alejandro." She waited, but I couldn't. Not over the phone. Not yet. "I'll explain everything when I get back. Just be careful. Don't trust anyone. Not even him." As I ended the call, a notification lit up my screen. An email. No sender. Just a subject line.
Stop digging.
Or you're next. The photograph haunted me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept seeing Catalina's eyes, half turned to the camera, her smile forced. Something was wrong. I returned to the marina the next morning, determined to trace their final voyage. The sun was harsh above Puerto Banús, yet the dock felt like a graveyard. After hours of questioning sailors and harbor staff, I found her, Marta, a dockhand with sharp eyes and a sharper memory. She recognized Catalina instantly. "They left late that day," Marta said. "Too late for a pleasure cruise. The sea was rough." She looked nervous. She paused. He looked angry. I felt a chill. "Do you know where they went?" Marta hesitated, then pointed toward the horizon. "Toward Isla de las Sombras. No one goes there. Not anymore." The Island of Shadows. I'd heard the name in whispers, a rocky outcrop half swallowed by fog, once home to smugglers and ghost stories. Locals avoided it. But something told me the answers I needed lay there. I hired a small boat and a reluctant captain. As we drew closer, the island emerged like a scar on the sea. Its cliffs were jagged, its trees twisted by salty winds. And there, hidden behind black rocks, was the wreckage of a small yacht, weather-beaten, half-submerged, and forgotten. I climbed onto the wreck, heart pounding. Inside, silence. Then, in a rusted compartment, I found it, Catalina's gold locket. Inside was a photo of the two of us, taken years ago. She'd brought it with her. Tears blurred my vision.
She had remembered me.
She'd kept that piece of our past, even on her last journey. But what had happened here? Where was her body? And why had no one searched? Suddenly, a voice broke the silence behind me. You should not have come here. I turned slowly. My blood froze. He stood on the rocks, cloaked in the mist that curled around the island like a living thing. The man's face was half in shadow, but I recognized him immediately. Alejandro. How did you find this place? He asked, his voice low, distant. I backed away slightly, the ruined yacht creaking beneath my feet. You brought her here, didn't you? His eyes didn't blink. I didn't kill her. That's not what I asked. Silence pressed in. The waves crashed violently against the cliffs, the only sound between us. Alejandro stepped closer, the mist parting as he moved. She wasn't supposed to come, he said at last. I told her to stay behind.
She followed me anyway.
Said she needed to know the truth. I stared at him, stunned. What truth? He looked away, jaw clenched. Catalina was involved in something. Something that went wrong. Her father had enemies, dangerous ones. She took something she shouldn't have. And she trusted the wrong people. You. I tried to protect her. His voice cracked like thunder. But she wouldn't listen. She was reckless. I didn't believe him. Not entirely. But there was pain in his voice, and for a moment, I saw the man I once loved. She disappeared, I said softly. And you just moved on? Alejandro laughed bitterly. You think I moved on? You think I haven't been haunted every day? I came back here, over and over again, hoping to find something. Hoping it was all a mistake. But the sea doesn't give back what it takes. The truth lingered in his words. Grief, guilt, perhaps even innocence. But Catalina was still gone. What happened that night? I asked. He looked down at the jagged rocks. She ran. I tried to stop her. She slipped, fell into the water. I jumped after her, but the tide pulled her under. I searched for hours. My throat tightened. And the body? Never found. I didn't know what to believe anymore. But something inside me still whispered, this wasn't the full story. Alejandro reached into his coat and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. She left this.
For you.
My fingers trembled as I took it. On the front, in Catalina's looping script, was my name. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The paper inside was worn, as though it had been read many times before. Catalina's handwriting danced across the page, graceful, urgent, undeniably hers. If you're reading this, it means something has gone wrong. I never wanted to drag you into this, but I couldn't keep you in the dark forever. There are people watching me, watching us. I think someone close to me has betrayed me. If anything happens, go to the old convent in El Ciego. You'll find answers there. I only hope it's not too late. There was no signature. No farewell. Just that, a final clue, hidden beneath grief and fear. I looked up at Alejandro, who stood watching me closely. You knew about this? I asked, holding up the letter. He nodded once. I found it the morning after. It was hidden in her journal. I didn't think it was safe to act on it. Until now. Why now?
His jaw tightened.
Because someone followed you to the island. And they're not here for answers. They're here to bury the past. My breath caught in my throat. I turned towards the treeline. A flicker of movement. A dark figure vanishing into the mist. We have to go, I said. There's a boat on the northern shore, Alejandro replied. Come. We moved quickly through the dense foliage, the air thick with salt and tension. I kept glancing behind, expecting a shadow to emerge, a hand to reach from the dark. But nothing came. Not yet. As we reached the shoreline, the boat waited, an old fishing vessel, barely seaworthy. We boarded in silence. Alejandro started the engine, and the island began to shrink behind us. What is at the convent? I asked. Catalina spent a summer there, he said. Her mother was raised by the nuns. It's where she kept the most personal things, journals, letters, perhaps even evidence of what she uncovered. I held the letter tightly. Do you think she knew this would happen? She was always 5 steps ahead, he said, a note of admiration in his voice. But she was also afraid. She didn't trust easily. And maybe she shouldn't have. The wind picked up as the boat cut through the waves. I watched the horizon, the sun dipping low, blood orange over the sea. We were heading back to the mainland, to a place Catalina had marked long before her fall. To El Ciego, a quiet village with a silent convent, and perhaps the final threads of a truth buried in shadow. As the shoreline drew near, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't known in months.
Hope.
The boat docked with a low thud against the worn stone pier. The convent loomed ahead, a towering structure built into the hills, its dark silhouette softened by the dusk light. It had been abandoned for years, its once pristine walls now cracked and weathered. The only sound was the wind, whispering through the overgrown courtyard. Alejandro stepped off the boat first, his gaze scanning the area. "Stay close," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the breeze. "There may be traps, things Catalina would have left to protect what she found." I nodded, clutching the letter in my hand. It was the only thing that felt tangible, that connected me to Catalina now. The rest, the fear, the uncertainty, it was all too much. We crossed the courtyard, stepping carefully over stones and through tangled vines. The door to the convent was ajar, the hinges rusty from years of neglect. Alejandro pushed it open with a soft creak, revealing a long hallway lined with faded tapestries and statues of saints. A faint smell of incense lingered in the air, but it wasn't comforting. It was heavy with the weight of time and secrets. We moved cautiously, Alejandro in the lead. His eyes darted from corner to corner, scanning every shadow. "Catalina used to come here to think," he said, his voice low. "She believed the convent held answers, but it wasn't just the nuns she was interested in. She thought they were hiding something. Something from the past." I asked, my voice shaky. He stopped in front of a wooden door at the end of the hall, its surface covered in intricate carvings. "This is it," he said quietly. "Where she found the journals. Where she uncovered what had been buried." Alejandro pushed open the door, revealing a small room. The air was musty, but the scent of old paper and leather filled the space. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with dusty tomes and manuscripts. At the center of the room stood a stone altar, the surface covered in faded papers and old photographs. I stepped forward, heart racing. "Is this everything?" He nodded, moving past me to a large wooden chest at the far end of the room. "This is where Catalina hid the truth. If she was right, everything we need to understand what happened is in here." With a creak, he opened the chest. Inside, there were bundles of yellowed papers and letters tied with string. Some of the pages were torn, others stained with ink. But one thing stood out, a photograph, its edges frayed, depicting a group of people I didn't recognize. Among them, Catalina's mother stood at the center, her expression stern. Alejandro picked up the photo, turning it over to reveal a name written in ink. Elena Navarro. "Her mother?" I asked.
He nodded. "Yes."
"But this isn't just about her. This goes back farther, to the founding of the convent, to a secret society that controlled the wealth of this region." My mind raced. The pieces were falling into place, but there were too many gaps. "What does this mean?" I asked. "What did Catalina uncover?" Alejandro stared at the photograph, his face growing darker. "She found out that the Navarro family wasn't just wealthy. They were involved in something far more dangerous. Something that, if exposed, would destroy everything." My pulse quickened. "And now you think someone is trying to finish what Catalina started?" He met my eyes.
"Yes."
"And I think they're coming for us." The sound of footsteps echoed from the hall, growing louder. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. "We're not alone," Alejandro whispered urgently. I looked around the room, my heart hammering in my chest. The door was the only way out. I didn't know if we could make it, but we had no choice. "Go," Alejandro urged, moving toward the door. "We need to leave, now." As I turned to follow him, the floorboards creaked behind me. A shadow appeared in the doorway, and I froze. Don't move, a voice called from the darkness. I froze, my heart racing in my chest. The voice was low and chilling, but there was something familiar about it. I couldn't quite place it, but I felt a sense of dread creeping up my spine. Alejandro was already moving, positioning himself between me and the door. His hand was on his gun, ready to defend us, but the shadow in the doorway didn't seem to move. Who's there? Alejandro demanded, his voice sharp. The figure stepped into the dim light of the room, revealing a tall man in a dark coat. His face was partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, but I could make out a sharp jawline and cold eyes that glinted in the low light. "It's you?" I whispered, my voice shaking. The man smiled, a thin, cruel smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Did you really think you could uncover the truth without consequences?" Alejandro stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "I thought you were dead." The man laughed, a sound that echoed in the room. "Many thought that. But I've been waiting, watching, for the right moment." I was trying to make sense of what was happening, but my mind was spinning. I recognized him now. He was a figure from the past, someone Catalina had warned me about, someone tied to the Navarro family's dark history. "You were part of the secret society, weren't you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The man's eyes gleamed with malice. "I was, indeed. And I see you found the evidence, the legacy of what your family was really involved in. But it's too late for you. You should have stayed away." Alejandro took a step forward, his hand still hovering near his gun. "You're not getting away with this," he said through clenched teeth. "Not again." The man chuckled darkly. "You really think you can stop me? You've barely uncovered the surface of what's hidden here. There's more, much more, and you'll never leave this place alive." Suddenly, the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the halls, growing louder. More figures were coming. It was a trap. I glanced at Alejandro, panic rising in my chest. "We need to go, now," I whispered. But the man was already moving, blocking the doorway. He drew a long knife from his belt, the blade gleaming in the low light. "You think you can escape?" he taunted. Alejandro's face hardened. "I'll fight if I have to." The tension in the room was palpable, the silence broken only by the distant sounds of movement. Every second felt like an eternity. I felt my pulse quicken as the man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving us. But just as he raised the knife, a loud bang echoed through the room. The man stumbled back, a look of shock crossing his face as he looked down at his side. A trickle of blood began to stain his coat, and he staggered, dropping the knife. Another figure appeared in the doorway, this one cloaked in shadows. The newcomer stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. "Don't worry," the figure said, a smirk on his lips. "I've got this covered." It was Diego.